thankful that you're here. It looks like you're the ones who are using the online version of the schedule to keep track of what sessions you're going to, because they did change it. They didn't change the others. So let's just jump right in here. How to make podcasting your most powerful form of content marketing. Just as a little background, I am the founder and overall client happiness guy for Podcast Fast Track. We are an audio production and show notes creation service for people who want to do a podcast but hate the time suck part of it. And so our service comes in, does everything behind the scenes to put it online for them and to do that month after month, week after week, just to make it a flawless sort of a publication for them. We do it for 150, we've worked with 150 clients so far. We're currently working with over 50 clients every month that we're publishing for. And our top clients are averaging over 8,000 downloads a day. So we've been at this since 2013. We've seen a lot of mistakes. We've seen a lot of successes. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've seen when it comes to content marketing power of a podcast. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I have drank the podcast Kool-Aid. I believe podcasting is one of the most powerful content marketing things that are out there, because you get some distinct advantages over other things. Before we get to those advantages, let me tell you some of the common results that we've seen with some of our clients of effective podcast content marketing. This is Roger Whitney. He's known as the Retirement Answer Man. Now, when Roger started his podcast, he was just another financial planner who focused on retirement issues. He chose the name The Retirement Answer Man because that's who he wanted to be in the eyes of his audience. And he's been publishing now for about 4 years because of his podcast. He gets speaking invites in his industry. He has gained 10 to 20 new clients. And for a financial planner, that's a significant increase in revenue. And Roger is now known in the industry as the Retirement Answer Man. Exactly what he wanted. That's what he's been able to achieve. This is Scott Volker. His show is called The Amazing Seller. And I noticed this when I was putting it together. Don't they look like they could be brothers? Older version, younger version. Scott is an Amazon private label sales guy, so related to e-commerce, what the guy was going to talk about here. He teaches people how to get their own products, say from a third-party supplier, put it on Amazon as their own branded product, and make a revenue and build a business that way. Scott started kind of just sharing his own journey of what he had experienced as he was doing this with his own private label products. And now, 3.5, 4 years later, has his own online courses, is making tons of cash from just the revenue that comes in from his expert status in the field. And if you ask anybody who does private label sales, who do you listen to, what podcast, Scott's is always going to be one that's mentioned, because he's one of the guys who knows the space backwards and forwards. These two guys, just to give you a little diversity here, this is Jason Zinger and Jim Carr here. These guys own manufacturing companies in Chicago. So they create metal parts, manufacturing, fabricating steel, things like that. That's what they do. But they love podcasting. And so they made it their goal to become leaders in the manufacturing industry through podcasting. And that's exactly what they've done. The manufacturing conference is coming up here in August. These guys will be podcasting live from the conference. And it's a big deal. They've become a go-to resource in their industry. And both of them, both in their authority in the space and in their particular businesses, have seen their revenues go up tremendously from the advantages of their podcast. Here's a totally different kind of show. I Love Madison. This particular client does 2 different podcasts with us, but I wanted to show you this one because this is a community-based show where he's drawing attention to Madison, Wisconsin, and the cool things that go on there and that sort of thing. He's building a brand and he's building authority there in Madison, Wisconsin. And the beauty for him is he's a real estate agent. And so he sponsors the show as the real estate agent, but talks about the town he loves. And when people who listen to the podcast need to sell, need to buy, need to refinance, guess who they think of? They think of Neil, the guy who does the I Love Madison show. This is my last example from among our clients. This is Dr. Jeremy Weiss. This guy's a chiropractor. But he does a show called Inspired Insider, where he interviews founders of companies like Whole Foods, companies like different energy bars and vitamin companies. And he walks through their story in these long-form interviews. And he has been able to build not just authority as an interviewer and a podcaster, but he also has built this mastermind group with one of his partners, John Corcoran, called Rise 25. This is a $5,000 a month mastermind to be in. And he and John bring in that paycheck every month from these high-level entrepreneurs and founders, all because of the podcast success that the two of them have been able to build. And so I hope you can see through these examples, podcasting is not always a straight line to your objective. Sometimes it's giving yourself a platform based on something you're interested in that ties into the revenue goals that you want to achieve. So let's just answer the obvious question. Why is podcasting such a powerful content marketing strategy? Well, I wanted to start out by talking about podcast or content marketing rather in the first place. This is a definition you're probably all familiar with in one form or another. Content marketing is a type of marketing that involves the creation and sharing of online materials such as videos, blogs, social media posts that does not explicitly promote a brand, but is intended to stimulate interest in its products or services. Now, the reason podcasting is so powerful for content marketing is because of these two highlighted sections. Whereas content marketing is not meant to explicitly promote a brand, and it's not meant to do anything except stimulate interest, podcasting has advantages in both of those areas. First of all, interest is already stimulated in what you want to talk about. For example, if someone is an Amazon private label seller and they want to learn more about Amazon private sales, they already have that desire. They have that interest already. They go into iTunes, they go into Stitcher, they go into the new Google Podcast app, and they search with keywords, just like we do on Google, for the topic they're looking for. And guess who comes up? Scott Volker comes up, because his podcast is one of the most downloaded in that area. So he doesn't have to generate interest in his topic. He's taking advantage of the interest that's already there. Your avatar, in essence, comes looking for you when you create a podcast and you do it well. Scott, as I mentioned, is a great example of that. He tapped into this right at the beginning of the private selling rage, and he had no idea his podcast was going to be the success that it is. But he's one of those clients that gets up to 8,000 downloads per episode. And when I mentioned that to a digital marketer earlier here today, I was telling him that as an example of what could happen. He said, that's not content marketing, that's brainwashing. Think about that. You're in someone's earbuds week after week after week. And Scott does 3 episodes a week. So 3 times a week, he's in their earbuds talking to them. He's naturally going to become the authority. Podcasting also is a medium that builds trust quickly. You think about the podcasts you listen to. You think about the things that you're interested in and the people you take advice from. They quickly become an authority in podcasting because of that intimate relationship. It's there in your ear. And the other part of the definition that was highlighted had to do with explicit promotion. People who listen to podcasts, after a while, begin to welcome explicit promotions of what you're doing as the authority, because they're there to learn from you. They're there to get information from you. And so when you offer your course for $199, or you offer your 3-part email series to build your email list, they're ready to jump right on because they're hungry for the information that you're providing. That's part of why podcasting is such a powerful thing. Dr. Jeremy Weiss is a great example of that. He now sponsors his podcast through the Rise 25 Mastermind group, and he mentions it on every show. And with every week, he gets more people expressing interest to the point that they're having 5 or 6 or 7 different masterminds going on at a time, with 5 to 6 people in those masterminds, each paying a couple of grand a month to be in the mastermind. You can do the math. Doesn't take long for that to be very well worth the time that you put into the podcast. Your job is to stand out. You don't have to do it by wearing a clown nose in public. You do it through creating great content. You do it through creating it in a medium that people are already searching, people are already enjoying. I mean, let me just see a show of hands. How many of you listen to podcasts? Okay, that's probably part of why you're here. How many of you do it when you're working out? How many of you do it when you're commuting? How many of you do it when you're cleaning the house? I mean, you do it in that extra time when you're normally not doing anything brain-wise except some kind of a brainless activity like commuting. Hopefully commuting is not too brainless, but you get what I'm saying. It's when you can use that downtime. And your job as a podcast producer is to stand out. You want to use this medium to add value and therefore outshine your competition. To me, that's what podcasting enables anybody to do if you're committed to it and committed to doing it right. If you're interested in a book on this topic that I think is one of the best you can read, it's called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. He talks about the power of becoming great at your craft and by so doing, becoming an authority in what you do. And podcasting is one of those mediums that, in my opinion, does this better than anything else. Now, you can do it in other ways. I mean, video, yes, blogging, yes, but think about the limitations of those. How many of you watch a YouTube video while you're driving in your car? I mean, not many of us, or at least we're not going to admit it if we do. How many of you read a blog while you're driving in your car? I mean, you don't. But podcasting has this ability to be used in those downtimes where you can become an authority. And the reason I am so convinced of the power of this is really tied to my own story. When I first started my business, I did so because I had retired from a previous career and really just had to put food on the table. And so I was doing some audio editing on the side for people that I knew, and one of them says, you should make a business out of this. And it was like the biggest light bulb that went on for me because I knew the pain was there. I knew there were a lot of people who wanted that service. But I knew nothing about how to start a business. I was actually a pastor of small churches for 20 years before coming into podcasting. And so I knew nothing about growing a business. But guess what? I started listening to business podcasts, one after another, after another, after another, and within months, I have the basic framework of how to start a business. Then I start getting business clients that I'm working on their audio every week, and guess what? I'm learning as I'm working, and I'm beginning to build those skills even more. And here, in just under 5 years, we're well over the double six-figure mark, and we're just cranking away with 16 team members, and I attribute most of that learning to podcasting. And I think that podcasting is a way that we can all do that, unlike what videos and blogs allow for. Some other advantages of podcasting. There's less competition in podcasting, at least right now. Now, as I say that, I have to be careful because there is something to the tune of 1,200 new podcasts a day landing in the iTunes directory. 1,200 a day are landing there. That's a lot of content. But the good news is they're not all going to be about the niche that you would want to talk about. They're not all going to be good quality. In fact, in my opinion, 60% of what lands in the iTunes directory is just audio junk. It's hard to listen to. It's not optimized well. It gets irritating after a while. So that narrows down the competition as well. You also have greater opportunities for consumption. We talked about commuting, about exercising, those different opportunities where people can listen, where they can't use those other forms of media. There's also relatively few people doing it well. Now, most of us have heard of a handful of podcasts, the NPR shows, S-Town, Invisibilia. There's all these podcasts that are done very, very well, but most of them are done by a public radio station. They're done by a big company that has a production budget. But when it comes to individual marketing agencies doing it for clients, or individuals like Scott or Jeremy who are doing it themselves, they don't have those kinds of budgets. But if they're willing to put in the time either to learn it or to learn how to outsource it effectively, they can compete with those big boys. They can compete on the same level of audio quality, just in a different way, in that way of building authority. And that competition actually becomes less and less as they get better and better at what they do. And it's a medium of greater intimacy. I talked about that just a little bit ago. You can build trust through podcasting, I believe, faster than in any other medium, because you're right there in their earbuds when it's just them in their car, driving along, no distractions, and they get to feel like you are their friend. It's amazing. I do a podcast about podcasting, a little bit meta there, but I have people contacting me through Twitter and through Facebook and through different social media platforms all the time, and they talk to me as if I'm their friend, as if I've met them and we've had coffee together and all that kind of, and it's just because they hear me every week. They act like they know me, and I don't know them from Adam. But yet, there's this feeling of intimacy in their mind. And so then when I am able to meet them at an event like this, or Podcast Movement's coming up next week, we're able to have this instant connection, and there's this trust that's built very quickly. simply because they've been listening. So here's the question a lot of you are probably asking. Is podcasting a good fit for you or for your clients? How many of you here are thinking about this for yourself or for your business? Okay, how many of you here have thought about, hey, could we as an agency provide this for our clients? See, I think that's, both of those are good. I think that second one is something I would encourage you all to think about, because there are services out there, mine not being the only one, who will white label this service for you. They will do all the back end work, and you just sell it to your clients. And they get their podcast just like they want, you get your healthy profit, and someone else does the work. It really can work that way. We've got a couple of people we're working with right now on that basis. So I think it's only a good fit if you're willing to invest time, energy, and possibly some funds. The reason I say and possibly is because you can learn everything you need to do a good podcast, a good high-quality podcast, if you care to. That's the thing. For most people, it's the time issue. They don't want to invest the time to learn. They don't want to invest everything needed to make it the quality it should be, because frankly, it's quite a learning curve. You really do have to work at it hard to get good at it. And if you've got the budget, why not outsource that? It's something that all of our clients do. And in fact, our little mantra that we say is Podcast Fast Track saves you from the podcast time suck, because that really is the issue. And there's a funny story behind that. I was just in the initial stages of starting the business, and I was really struggling. I was having a hard time selling. I was having a hard time getting clients, and I had been focusing on audio quality, and I'd been focusing on SEO value of our show notes and all that kind of stuff. And people were getting it. They just weren't buying. They just weren't signing on the dotted line. And one early morning, it was like 20 minutes before my alarm went off, I sat straight up in bed with the word time in my mind. It was like, I'm not selling audio, I'm not selling SEO, I'm selling time. That's the benefit that these people will get. And that's when I changed the moniker to saving you from the podcast time suck, and that's when sales started going up. Because it really is that issue. It's the issue of time. If you don't take the time to do all those things, this is going to be you. You're going to think you're doing it well. You're going to think it's sounding great. But everybody else is going to be looking, going, no. And you know that just from the skills that you have. It takes time. It takes a lot of practice. It takes effort. But once you do, once you put it in, or once you find someone to do it for you, it really can take off. So let's talk for a second about how to create a content roadmap for a successful podcast. And what I mean by a content roadmap is deciding what it is this podcast will be about, what is it that we'll talk about, that sort of thing. This will be helpful for those of you who are considering a podcast for yourself. If you're an agency and you're thinking about this for your clients, this is something you'd want to do with your clients. This is an exercise. I've got a couple of ideas here for you. Okay, the first one is a content discovery exercise I call 10-10-10. All you need for this is a pile of sticky notes and a timer of some sort. And here's what you're going to do. For 10 minutes, you're going to brain dump every single idea you could talk about. You don't want to censor yourself. You don't want to say, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. You just want to get them out. Just bullet point list everything on a sheet of paper. What I do with the sticky notes is I'll put one on each sticky note. I'll just pull it off, write another one, pull it off, write another one. Just go for 10 minutes. Then you're going to go gather up your pile of sticky notes, and for 10 minutes, you're going to go through them, putting 3 subpoints on each one, kind of like your outline in high school literature class. You're going to create those subpoints. Okay, under this topic, what are the 3 main things I would say? Put it aside. Grab the next one. 3 main things. Put it aside. And then you're going to organize, sort, and assign those. Now, what do I mean by that? Organize and sort are kind of the same thing. You're going to put them in an order that makes sense. So imagine episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. How do these need to be talked about sequentially? And put them in line. Put them in order. That's where the sticky notes come in. Stick them up on the window, and move this one over here and that one over there. That's why I do it with sticky notes. And then the assign part means maybe there's someone in your company who could talk to that topic a lot better than you could. So you're going to call them in for an interview, or you're going to have them record that episode. Maybe you know an industry expert who speaks to that topic better than you could. You're going to invite them to be a guest on that episode. You see what I'm saying? You're going to assign the topics to certain people, and then you'll have to do the legwork to make that work. But here's what I think most businesses could do more successfully, and that is repurpose. Think about your clients. Think about your particular business. You have presentations, you have white papers, you have blog posts, you have webinars, you have Facebook Live sessions that have already been created. Most of those can be repurposed into podcasts. It either needs to be read into a microphone or the audio stripped out of the video and an intro and outro added, levels optimized, and suddenly you've got a podcast episode. Do you see the point? You can take content you've already created and repurpose it, because chances are the people who will listen to your podcast are not the people who are currently reading your blog or currently watching your YouTube videos. They're a different kind of consumer a lot of times, and you can just repurpose without fear of kind of beating a dead horse or saying the same things over and over. Now, let me give you some of the first steps to launching a successful podcast. And before I say that, let me say this. You need to educate yourself. That's really the first step. 80% of the clients I've worked with over the last 5 years who started podcasting and then did what we jokingly call pod fading, they just kind of faded out, they quit doing it, failed because they did not educate themselves on what they were doing. They just kind of tried to fly by the seat of their pants and just do it haphazardly without any knowledge of how podcast listings work and how RSS feeds work and all that kind of stuff, and they failed, and it's understandable. I mean, think about the discipline you work in, whether it's copywriting or it's the actual Google ad campaigns or things like that. You have a learning curve you have to go through in order to become proficient at that. Podcasting is no different. For some reason, there's this perception that a podcast, you can just build it and they will come. Well, it's not true at all. It's not true at all. You've got to educate yourself. So, this is free for you. We have a 12-module video course called How to Podcast Step by Step. There's the URL. You can have it for free. Educate yourself if you're considering doing a podcast. This really is something, what we do with this course is it's a $99 course. We could charge $4.99 for it easily. But the reason it's a $99 course is because when people come to us and want to work with us, we believe in this education piece so much, we say, first, you've got to go through our course before we'll even work with you. Now, if they've already podcasted before, that's a different thing. You know, they kind of know what they're doing already. But if they're brand new, they've got to go through this course first. And it's because the education is that important. It's $99 so that they have a little bit of skin in the game. They have some motivation to get going. But it's not so much that they're going to say, oh, you're just in this for the money. No, if I was in this for the money, it'd be a $500 course. But it's not. It's just enough. So you can have it for free. That website will be a downloadable PDF, has all the information, how you can log into the course. It's yours. Second thing you need to do is set a reasonable launch date. You need time to prepare and time to coordinate your marketing. You're a lot of marketers, so I don't have to tell you how important that is. You've got to kind of work this thing out. How am I going to strategically get the word out about this podcast? And think of it also in terms of ongoing. A podcast is something that has evergreen content. It's publishing again and again and again. You don't want to just market for a big launch and get lots of downloads at the beginning and then forget about it. You want to be marketing it consistently, marketing old episodes consistently, marketing everything over and over and over, and your podcast is going to grow. So you need time for prep and coordination, you need time for promotion, but not so much time that you fail to launch. Have you ever had that experience? You're just trying to get one more thing in line, one more duck in a row, one more widget fixed before you actually launch this great thing that's in your head. And before long, you lose the motivation for it. Podcasting happens that way a lot for people. They get all excited and they're ready to go, but they just take too much time. So prepare, but don't over-prepare. Set that date and go for it. Let the date be a motivator. You also want to be strategic. Find your target niche and get to know them. Your marketers, you understand this. You've got a target audience that you're looking for, an avatar that you're aiming at. Find out as much about them as you can. Podcasters are notoriously bad at this. They just start publishing and expect people who are interested are going to find their show. No, you have to find them, understand them, and get the message in front of them in a way that appeals to them. Sounds like marketing, doesn't it? That's really what it is. You have to find that niche and get to know them. The best places I've found for this are Facebook groups, Reddit subreddits, where people are talking about the topics you're going to be podcasting about. And you don't want to be that guy or that gal who jumps in there and goes, hey, I have a podcast. Did you know about my podcast? I have a podcast episode this week. Did you know about the podcast? Hey, well, subscribe to my podcast. You don't want to be that person. You want to get in there and truly add value, truly be a part of the conversation. And as they have questions that come up that your podcast addresses, then feel free to share. Hey, I did an episode on that just a couple of weeks ago. You might find it helpful, that sort of thing. That's the use social wisely thing, platform and approach. First, don't be that guy or gal, but secondly, don't take the wrong approach on the wrong platform. You know what I'm saying? I have a friend who does Christian devotional kinds of things, and he posts them every single morning to LinkedIn. And yeah, the people in LinkedIn probably need what you're providing, but they're not going to respond well to that because that's not what LinkedIn's for. So understand the platforms and use them appropriately. You want to also tap into every asset you have, including favors. Meaning, when you're going to launch this podcast, you want to call in favors. You want to find those influencers that you've connected with and ask them, hey, I'm doing this great podcast. It's starting next week. Would you mind letting your list know about this? Would you mind posting about it on social? And obviously, you have to have a certain level of relationship with the person before they're willing to do that. But don't overlook it when it comes to getting your podcast rolling. You need to be able to tap into those relationships because you'd do the same for them if they came to you. Those are really the kind of people you want to work with. If you do it for them, just assume they would do it for you and go and ask. It never hurts to ask. And it gets that momentum going very, very quickly. And then finally, be consistent and patient. Publish great content, do it repeatedly, do it consistently, and be patient. One of the things I hear from my clients all the time is things like this. Man, we've been doing this podcasting thing for 3 months, and I'm not seeing any ROI. And I have to stop for a second and say, listen to yourself. We've been doing this for 3 months. Months. We're not talking years. We're talking months, and you're expecting a huge ROI already. It takes time to build authority. It takes time to build a dedicated, loyal audience. It takes time to gain trust. But if you're patient, like some of the people I showed you, man, over time, the growth curve just is exponential. Now, one thing I'll tell you about podcasting is it's hard to gauge ROI. It really is, because the very nature of podcasting, it began kind of as a grassroots thing, where a bunch of geeks in a basement with programming knowledge created this thing called an RSS feed and enclosures to add audio to it, and anybody could start podcasting. And because it was that kind of a thing, the bigwigs in the media industry didn't pay much attention. In fact, they poo-pooed it a lot at the beginning. Oh, it's just those guys in the basement. It's the amateur radio people, all that. Well, podcasting is still very much that way, to the point that there's very few standardized metrics. There's very little in the way of real tracking of how your episodes are actually doing. Now, your hosts and all that, your media hosts, they'll give you stats on how many downloads are happening every month and all that kind of stuff. But a download does not necessarily equate to a listen. You understand what I'm saying? They've got it on their device, but they haven't listened, and there's no way to know if they've listened. And I don't foresee a way that the tech's going to change where you can know that they listen because of privacy issues. There's just all kinds of craziness about it. But if you're consistent and if you're patient, it's one of those things that really will take off. Oh, wrong button, going backwards instead of forwards. It's really a marathon. It is. Don't think of podcasting as a sprint. This is a marathon. It's a long-term content marketing strategy. But I'm telling you, it builds authority like you never would have thought. It creates opportunities because you're speaking directly to the people who are interested in what you have to say. I mean, you know your own experience if you listen to podcasts. You don't download podcasts you're not even remotely interested in. You just don't. You download things you want to hear about or that you're curious about. And then you become a listener. And then you go, hey, this show's great. I want to listen more. Hey, I hear this guy speaking at the conference. I'm going to go to that conference because I want to hear him speak. You see what I'm saying? It builds over time. And it's something that can happen for anybody. This is my contact info. If you are interested in connecting with me in any way, happy to do it. I'll be up here afterward for however long it takes if you have questions. Thank you for your time.